Hello, ladies. Good to see you today. Absolutely. We're going to start by telling you all their names, okay? So it'll take a little while, but everybody wants to know where the queen bee is. So if you come look at her later, the queen bee is the one that has a purple dot. It's got a little pink circle. Now, she doesn't have that naturally, just so you know. What has happened is the queen bee is basically, she is like a slave to the hive. That sounds pretty bad, but she has one of the most important roles in the hive. And what she has to do is this: she has to lay the eggs to sustain the hive. Now, a healthy queen with plenty of room can lay up to 2,000 eggs every day. Yes, that's a lot of work. And so that's what she does. You really can only have one queen per hive. Now, there are a few exceptions to that, but realistically, she is the person who is controlling what is going on in the hive. Now, I'm going to do the best I can not to get into the spiritual applications of a bunch of them, because there is so much you can learn, like Miss Clark said, about God's order and even the applications you can make for your home and applications you can make for the church. There is so much that you can learn. So I'll say some things that you'll probably go, wow, that would apply in my life and that would apply in the church and so on and so forth. But she does so much in keeping the temperament of the hive, keeping things in order by the smells and the movement and what she's doing. But the workers in the hive are doing everything they can to keep her productive. That's what's happening. So if you go looking for her later, she'll probably be in one of the bottom two frames of this hive. And, oh, yes, ma'am.
Wait, oh goodness gracious, I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to be helping ladies.
It's a good thing we were starting a little bit later here because you're late.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Can you just sit down for a minute? I'm trying to explain what's going on.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. So
Woo.
we'll get to you.
Try
to relax, Miss Brown. It's good to see you.
How you ladies doing? Oh, sorry, it's your show.
No, yeah, it's. I was talking about the queen bee. You kind of came in like the queen
I'm
bee.
A queen too. Okay.
Did you notice how the environment changed when she came in?
Oh, we felt that energy, the queen energy. Go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry.
she does it by smells and things, but anyway, so the queen bee she's interesting. She's on here, and I don't have time to kind of go through, finding her for you, but the majority of the bees in this hive, they're ladies, the majority. So the difference between the worker bee and the queen bee is really that she's just more developed because of what they fed her. So most people like to talk about the honey in the hive, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time on today. But what they do is they feed her a substance called royal jelly.
Ooh, I love me some royal jelly.
Yes. And it helps her greatly. And so what'll happen is they'll continue to feed it to her, and it helps her to develop so that she can then be able to go out and mate with one of the drones, or multiple drones come back and be able to lay eggs through her life. Now, it's interesting, with the majority of them being workers, again, lady workers in here, that's what the majority of them are. There are male bees, they are called drones. Now, when I spoke to some other people who work with that, and I told them I was going to be doing a session with a bunch of ladies, they said, oh, you should tell them the concept behind the drones, because they do nothing. And so
I believe that.
I thought you might like learning about that. So the drone's responsibility, if you find a drone in here, it is just a big bee with a big head and some big eyes. And their responsibility is whenever there's a virgin queen, she'll mate with them. And once they're done, they die. That's the role of the drone bee. All right. So what'll happen is, if there are too many drones in a hive and there's maybe a dearth, which means that there's not as much nectar for them to find in the flowers, they will, as they get closer to winter and other times where they know not much is going to be going on, they will just push them out of the hive and take care of them, kill them, let them die out there, and the ladies run the show. All right. So that is how it works with the bees. And so you make the applications as you see fit there to understand it. But the majority are workers here. There is the queen bee who's developed, and she's in here. She's laying eggs. You'll be able to see her later, and it's a great thing. So realistically, it's pretty amazing. There's two different, if you would say, frames. There's what's called a brood frame, and then also honey frames. Now, they don't know that. That's just what we do to label them. So brood is baby bees. And what happens is there's a short life cycle for bees. Most worker bees will last for basically about 6 weeks in the summer. They do not last long. In the wintertime, if you have extended winters, they can live as long as maybe even 6 months. But they basically work themselves to death. So how many of you in here, you enjoy honey? You like honey, my honey people here, all right? Absolutely.
I love me some honey.
So do they. That's good. And so what you see is this, is you see that there's a lot of work that goes into this. So people ask me, about how many bees do you think you have in here? And I'm guessing because I didn't count them all. But in a smaller hive like this is 4 frames. You'll see the boxes behind Miss Brown back here. Can you display those for me?
Oh, yes, I can. Hold.
Yeah. All right. And so these boxes back here, each of those hold about 10 frames on the inside. I wouldn't break them though. All right. And so
honey. Okay.
inside you have these frames and there's 10 of them that would set inside of there. So there's only 4 that are displayed here. All right. And so what'll happen is the bees, they'll work that. But in this, there's probably somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000. That's a queen excluder. We'll talk about that later. All right. And so what happens is there's a great population. Here's why. It takes 12 bees their entire lifetime to get you 1 teaspoon of honey. Ooh. Their entire life. So all 6 weeks, 12 of them to get you 1 teaspoon of honey. But bees are very important. So, a lot of people want to talk about the sweetness of the honey, but I want you to know that they're also very beneficial. So when it comes to, you think about the things that you eat, the statistic, and it's not just honeybees, it would be bees in general, but 1 out of every 3 bites you take has been pollinated and made available to you because of bees. So they are very beneficial. They're not the only pollinators. Some of the other pollinators aren't exciting to have around, like yellow jackets. You know what I mean? So I would rather have honeybees than yellow jackets. They do pollinate, but they're a little more aggressive and annoying and hard to get rid of. So anyway, honeybees, they create this honey. So the process, and then we'll get to the making of the honey, which is what people really like. They like the benefits of it, right? But what they'll do is this, they'll fly from their hive and they'll go out, and generally within 2 to 3 miles of their hive, what'll happen is this, they'll go to the flowers and they'll pull nectar and they'll pull pollen from them. Sometimes they go as far as 5 and even further miles away to gather resources and bring back to the hive. And so they'll go out there and they'll work and they'll do all that they're doing. And in its lifetime, I mean, you're talking millions of flowers that they will visit just in their lifetime to bring it back to the hive. And the nectar, what it does is this, is they will pare it down by passing it back and forth, by fanning it and dehydrating it until it thickens up and becomes what we would know as honey. And so some people say it sounds a little bit nasty when you say you're eating like bee spit, right? And so that's not very, enjoyable in that aspect, but that's what's going on here. And so when you look at these hives, generally the higher up in the hive, you're going to find more honey and resources. They like to work up. And on the bottom is the brood, and they take care of the bees. There's plenty more I can tell you about that, and so maybe we'll kind of come full circle. But I wanted you to know a little bit about how the bees work, what you're seeing in the hive, and how that's happening. But there's great order. Everybody serves a purpose. Like most people say, oh, well, the queen's the most important. Well, the queen doesn't even feed herself. Oh. She's fed the whole time by those worker bees. By the way, the male bees don't feed themselves either, just so you know, all right? But anyway, they take care of the queen, and they work that through. So what happens is this. All right, Miss Brown, you ready to help me a little bit?
Oh, yes, I am.
Is that your purse? You don't want to trip over that.
You know what? I probably will.
Yeah, you might trip over
it. Do you know what a bee's blood type is?
I'm not sure.
B positive. Okay, that's something. I'm going to teach you something.
That's pretty impressive. Is there B negative or just B positive?
Just B positive.
Okay, all right. So this is what you would see in kind of your start for a hive is what this would be. And we'll try to get some of this up on the screen. I understand you can't see all of it, but generally what happens in the hive is you have a base, and this base just gives you the support underneath, and there's different styles that you can have under. You can have screen boards, and you can have solid boards, and a lot of it depends on temperature and even some of the enemies of the bees and what you would want in there and what you give access to, sometimes even for the cleanliness of it. And so this is called an inner cover.
Can you paint this and bedazzle it if you want?
You can definitely bedazzle it. Now, you don't want one that has wax on it because it doesn't stick very well. Your bedazzle will just bedazzle.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to bedazzle.
No. And so a lot of people, what they'll do is they will paint it different colors. And my girls, they're looking forward to doing that. I've got some of the white supers over there I'll talk about, but they can get painted up. And supposedly the bees can recognize what they look like. So I don't know if that's true or not. They haven't told me that, but that's how it works. So this is what's called a deep frame. And generally speaking, after they get into their first hive, there are a few other things that I don't have for you today, like nuke boxes, which is really a small nucleus almost of bees and workers. But basically what will happen is you want them to start filling in this bottom box. And this is what's going to belong to the bees. So when it comes to harvesting, we don't ever harvest from where the bees are going to pull their resources. And the reason why is they need to be able to eat too. So we have our winters around here. And again, depending on where you're from, you may have even more harsh winters. They need to have food through the winter. So I'll talk to you about the idea of feeding the bees and taking care of them. But these frames that you see in there, they start out like this and they just have a foundation. On the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, these are plastic. Some people make them out of wax because they don't want plastic in their hive, and there's plenty of things that you can do with that. You want to put those back in there?
I sure do.
Okay. And so anyway, this gets you started here, and it allows you to be able to have a home for the bees. So as Mrs. Clark mentioned at the beginning, people kind of get amazed by how do they come back? Well, again, they want to be where the queen is, and they want to be where the brood is. All right. So any of the nurse bees, the ones that are tending to the brood, they don't want to leave. And the reason why is because they are integral in making sure that they're going to hatch, which strengthens the hive and does everything that's going to do. All right. So what happens though is the further you get, I'm going to grab this one. Can you grab that small box?
Oh, yes, I can do that.
We're going to trade. I'm going to put mine down. You're going to put yours on top.
Okay.
Look at that. Boom. So what happens is if this were your box, it doesn't have the bottom board for the sake of illustration. I didn't want to bring any of the real bees in because I didn't think you wanted those visitors. But this deep box here, as they begin to fill that, when you put a box on top, a lot of times people call it a super. They put it right on top, all right? And so what will happen is this is a medium. You see it's a little bit shorter here. What happens is you fill these frames in here, they will want to draw up and start putting resources. Now, there's some things you can do. This is called a queen excluder. Now, I don't use these, but they are important at different times depending on what you're doing. A lot of commercial beekeepers will use things like this. And what it is this, it's slots on here. Now, remember the queen bee is a little bit bigger. All right, there we go. I'm just trying to show you over here.
What are you trying to say? She's a little bit bigger.
Well, she is a little bit bigger, all right? She's eating a lot of royal jelly. I was talking about the queen bee. Now, what we've got is this. This does not allow the queen to pass through. So what that means is if the queen doesn't pass through, you're not going to get any eggs up where you're going to try to extract your honey. So it does help you if you don't have the time, you don't want to go back. Because the big question people ask me a lot is how often do you have to go in there to get the honey, right? So for me, realistically, 2 times a year is all that I have to go and take care of extract the honey, and I do a whole production of it. Easy enough, right? You get a spring harvest, fall harvest, easy enough. So if you need to do it quickly, what happens? You mind lifting that box for me?
Oh, I got you.
Make you do the heavy work.
Assistant.
So anyway, if you put that queen excluder and you put it right back on top, as she's working that bottom box, she's laying the eggs, they're taking care of her. The workers will come up through this excluder, and they'll be able to fill the honey and make that filled the way that you want so you can extract it from there. So that's what a queen excluder will do. All right. So basically what you would see is this. You would have these out. The bees would be working in and out. And a big question is this, can I have one where I'm at? How many of you are pretty much in the city, more city people here, right? Just so you know, people have honeybees in the city, all right? Your stuff, your trees, all that has to be pollinated as well. Now, I'm not telling you that you can definitely do it with different ordinances, but in most places, as long as you do it the right way, you can get it approved to be able to have honeybees where you're at. And so sometimes in the city, what people do is they'll put it up on a rooftop and things like that. Now, you want access so that you can get to it. But what I have is in the back of my yard. I don't have a ton of space, but I don't want them flying all where my kids are. I've got 4 young daughters. They like to play around. And so for the majority of the time, they can play anywhere in my yard. Now, sometimes they're a little more active in the back, but what I have is a 6-foot fence in front of the hive.
That's smart.
And so what happens is when I it's actually right there behind you. So when this fence comes up, show them the entrance. You want to point to that entrance right there at the bottom?
Oh,
That's the entrance. The other one's the handle.
I'm the specialist, but just
it's okay. Just point. So then what happens is this, I'll put that fence up here. So when the bees come out, they'll go above the fence and then they take you'll hear this, a beeline, right? And they'll go where they're going. And so I don't really see a lot more bees in my yard because they're going miles away gathering the nectar and doing that. So a lot of people don't know that. So just as a heads up, all right? So there's different tools that are helpful in extracting that. When you get into these hives, what happens is this: the bees, they will glue things together. So not only do they go and gather nectar and pollen, but they also gather what's called propolis, which is basically like bee glue. All right. So there's different products. Most times people think with honeybees, oh, they're gonna, all you can do is honey. There's plenty of different products that are out there. For example, weren't you sick a little bit? Were you struggling trying to get that voice?
I had a little laryngitis.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were trying to get Miss Brown healthy, and so we were giving her like propolis spray.
Tasty.
And was it tasty?
Oh, yes,
yeah,
it was.
Yeah. I don't think it's that tasty.
I just chugged it.
Chugged it. I can tell. And so so you have this spray, and it's an immune booster. And so it has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral properties. And what they do is they actually use it in different cavities and spaces to be able to keep bad things out. So they'll glue it shut to keep pests out. Also where the air flows, it'll kind of come through that area, and it's a sticky glue-like substance. So when you go to pull those frames out, you want a tool to be able to break those free from how they've glued them together. Sometimes they use wax. You'll see between these frames there's wax that they've drawn, and you can pop that out so that you can see kind of what's going on. All right, so this tool really helps you to be able to navigate within your box, to be able to move them around. And a lot of people wondered, how in the world did you mark that queen? So I'm going to tell you that just so that you get an idea. So if you ever purchase a queen from somebody, people make a lot of money by raising queens. All right, for example, I made a mistake. And in transferring them into the box here, I accidentally dropped my queen, and I never found her again. I probably stepped on her, which was sad, all right? We felt bad for the pink queen. Now you have the purple queen, all right? So that's what happened. Just in case she showed back up. I just wanted to make sure I knew the difference. But I had to go purchase another one, and she came in this cage. And what happens is there's a screen mesh on the side, because remember, she communicates them through smells and the pheromones that she lets off. So they could get to know her, and they could actually feed off of this little screen mesh in the front. And then on the underside, there's a candy plug. And what happens is they slowly eat that, and it gives them time to get acclimated to each other. That way, once she comes out, they don't view her as a threat. Because if they smell different pheromones, they'll view it as if there's a threat or there's competition. And that queen doesn't want competition, so she's going to take care of it, right? So we did that to reintroduce her. But before we did, what I did was I took a non-toxic marker, and what you can do is you can pin her. You knew. How did you know? I told you I'm a specialist. You are a specialist.
You see my hat? You didn't say nothing about my hat.
Well, I thought you wanted that for when the bees come out.
Oh no, we're not bringing the bees out.
Isn't that a pretty? Let's give her a hand for that veil. I like that.
Jokes.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. And so basically what happens is this, all right? So there's a little spot there where her thorax, the middle of her back, can be able to be put there. And so I don't smash her. There's a little sponge on the bottom of that. And once you put her in, she's not going to sting you. She's not interested in that. She could, but she doesn't want to, because when honeybees sting, if they sting a human, they'll actually die. Now, they can sting other things like other insects and stuff and not die from it, but the layers of our skin, they get stuck in there, and they leave it, and it keeps pumping venom right into you. So don't get stung. I don't suggest you do that. All right? So what happens, you put her in there, and you push her up to the top, and then once you get her pinned, you can take that marker, and you can mark her, and it makes it way easier to be able to find her. So if you're ever tending to your hive, you want to see what's going on, there's ways that you can find her that way. And again, you're looking to see that she's doing a good job. So a lot of times, I don't even care to see her. I just want to see that she's doing a great job.
Did she say she wanted pink or blue?
She wanted purple. I did pink first, and the blue turned into purple with a pink ring around it. Yeah, that's what she expected. So another thing is this. This is a good way for you to be able to hold her in. Exactly. Hair clip to the queen. All right, so you put that on there. And what this does, it allows the workers to get in, but the queen not to get out. It allows, again, her to get used to them if you're trying to introduce and do that.
So if you have a hair clip at home, you can just use the one you have, right?
I wouldn't do that. Because it probably isn't the right size.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times people wonder, how many of you have seen people like smoking the bees, right? Putting smoke on the bees. So there's a few different ways that you can kind of get the bees relaxed. A busy bee is a happy bee. All right, if they don't have something to do, they get agitated. And so they need to stay busy. But one of the things, yeah, some of you made an application there, didn't you? All right, and so what'll happen is this, is you get this smoker going, and what it does is it actually helps calm them down. Now, if you get smoke in your face because of your lungs, you don't like that. You're like, ugh. They don't like it either, but they don't have lungs like us. So they'll just naturally go down deeper in the hive. When you smoke them, they'll want to go down and away, and it allows you to work without having so many bees up in your face. And that greatly helps. Now, just kind of moving through here, and I'll answer any questions later if we have time for it, kind of hanging on the rack there. I don't know if you want to maybe show them some of those displays.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
But there's different protection that you can wear to make it easier for you to be able to get in the hive. And even if they do get a little upset, they're not going to be able to get to you to sting you. So there's different veils. Now that looks like a little one. That's one that a lot of times what we'll do, my kids like to go back there and see that. And so we'll throw that on there, trying to help them get back there and get in with the bees. And they're a little more adventurous than others at times, and one of them is a little bit more apprehensive, but they get back there and they want to see it, and that veil keeps them off your face, and it's a blessing.
I can put this on in the back if you want.
I don't think that's going to work.
No? Oh, okay.
And so that's the one there. I went a little bit thicker. I will make this advice. If any of you try to do beekeeping stuff, don't buy stuff with plastic zippers. All right, you probably already know that. I learned that the hard way as my zipper wasn't working, and I'm trying to get it zippered around my neck, and I got bees flying all over the place because it had come apart. And I was like, what a mess. All right, so it was a pretty tough little situation. And that's a jacket there. So like if you don't want to, worry about like getting into a full suit, you can put that jacket on, cover your arms, cover your head, and you can handle it that way. And then there's also a veil on this side, she'll get to it, where that can just kind of go over your face and your head if you feel comfortable. Supposedly a beekeeper is actually the occupation where people live the longest, and they think it's a lot of times because of the bee stings helps build their immune system, and they're a lot of times healthier because of it. So moving on this way, you've probably seen some of this. All right, we're over here to the sweetness. You ready for this? I don't want to wear you out.
If you don't want to wear one of those hats, you can also do this.
What'd you just say? I didn't hear what you said.
I said they can wear a hat, like very fancy hat like
that would
this
work.
If they don't want to.
They might fall right up under there though. That's cool for flying ones. No. Can you hold this?
Yes.
It's heavy. Sir. It's heavy. It's heavy. No, hold from the top.
Goodness.
Hold from the top. You got that? All right. That's a sticky one.
This is heavy, but not too heavy for me.
So there you go. So this is a honey frame. Now, what you'll see, and it's a lot easier in the display hive when you go to see it, there's what's called capped honey and uncapped honey. So the bees know when the moisture level is good enough to be able to be capped and kept. So honey is actually pretty much the only food on the earth that doesn't go bad. Now, there is an exception to that. And what happens is if there's too much water content in the honey, it can go bad. So you want to make sure that the moisture content is good. The safest way to know that the moisture content is good for it to be kept in a jar is to use what's called capped honey. So that capping, the bees know it is good enough. Now, some of the honey that is uncapped is also still good, or it's very close to being good. So if you're going to harvest a bunch, it'll be just fine.
How much is this going to get us?
That right there, that's probably about 7 to 8 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. Of honey, just in one frame. And so each one has about 10. The smaller ones, that's one of the deep frames. The other ones have about 5 pounds of honey on each one, and you factor, there's 10 frames in there. So if they're totally full, that's about 50 pounds of honey. And so there's a lot of honey that you can get into that, all right?
That's
so we'll show you that.
Honey.
Yeah, it is.
Could I call you honey?
I guess you can. Like your grandson. Okay. Praise the Lord. Should I call you like Meemaw or Miss Brown?
You go call me Miss Blue. I got my official volunteer. You gonna call me Miss Brown, but that's okay.
I'll call you Miss Brown then, all right? Miss Marsha Brown. So anyway, what you'll see is this is to be able to get this honey out. There are many different methods. The easiest way, in my opinion, is to be able to decap that honey, put it in what's called an extractor. Now, I have one that has a motor on it, and the machine will run. It'll take care of it. Does it a lot faster. Your hands are free to jump onto the next thing you need to do. But they also have physical extractors that you can do that are a lot cheaper. You can also just decap them and let it drip out. Some people like the honeycomb, and they actually want to scrape it out and have the honeycomb with it. Now, if you want to know what that's like, if you've never done it, it's similar to those old wax candies. And so you'll get all the taste of the honey, and then when it's left, it's just wax, okay? So if you don't like that, then that's what it would leave you with. But the most fragrant and really, in my opinion, the best honey is when you get it right from the comb. Now, this is something I wanted to give to you before we do this extraction process. There's a big difference. So if you never end up being a beekeeper, and I'm not trying to push everybody to be a beekeeper, but if you end up being a beekeeper, you'll be able to learn a lot of this. You'll learn a lot quickly. There's a lot of resources that are out there. But if you never do that, I want you to know that the honey you buy from the store is very different, has many different, if you would consider, grades. So just because something says honey sauce or honey does not mean that you're eating pure honey, okay? So some of the buzzwords. Yeah. So some of the buzzwords that are out there would be this. You have things like pure honey, So if it says pure honey, it should have no other additives in it. That would be the goal. But supposedly honey is one of the most adulterated foods that are out there because a lot of times people don't really see the process. And so it's important to know where you're getting it from and something that you trust. And I think that it would help you on that. But here's the factor and how it's beneficial, just so that you're kind of aware of it. Pure honey is supposed to actually be honey. But most commercial beekeepers, they'll heat it up and they will filter the honey in a way that it helps their production. It'll move it through very fast. The warmer honey is, the faster it moves like water, and they can process a whole lot more of it. So if you get pure honey, grade A pure honey, that's what you'll see a lot in the stores. It is honey, but you have pretty much lost most of the beneficial properties except for a sweetener. Just so that you're aware of that. There's other things like raw and unfiltered honey or directly out of the honeycomb, they'll say it like that, where it'll actually have the honeycomb with it. And the main things that you're realizing is this, is if you have honey that's not been heated up, then you have honey that also still has that antibacterial property to it. It'll have little granulars of, you'll hear people say local honey, so it has a little bit of the residue of pollen that was left in there. So people that deal with allergies and things like that, if you eat local honey, it helps your body actually build up immunity to the pollen in your area. And so it can greatly reduce some of the effects that you have there. If it's been heated over about 95, even 100 degrees, you will lose those properties. And most commercial places will do that unless they tell you that they don't. If anything says like honey sauce, you have no idea what's in there. Could be high fructose corn syrup, could be extra additives, natural flavors, right? So that is important for you to be able to know, and I'll show you a little bit about this. So these frames here are frames that we've pulled off of the different honey. You can just keep holding that. It keeps you busy.
You said it's 8 pounds.
Yeah. Maybe you could
work me out.
I was going to say, you could get some working out there. So you see a lot of what's going on here. And some of these you'll be able to come and see maybe later. But they draw out this honeycomb, and it allows them to be able to fill this with the honey, the nectar, and then obviously the brood at times. And so I went ahead and started a lot of this extraction process so you know what was going on. But before you can have this extractor pull it out, a lot of times what happens is you have to decap it. So if we've got our mobile camera, we'll put this up on the screen. It'll probably make it easier for some of you. Why don't we do the big one so that it's not gonna hurt you as much? You know what I mean?
Let me ask you a question. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, ask me. Go ahead.
Do you know when bees get married?
When they do what?
When they get married.
No, what happens?
When they find the honey.
Hey,
that's when they get it.
That's when they do that. All right.
That's joke for you.
That was funny. You made me laugh.
Listen.
I'll
try, okay?
You are funny. Can I have that?
I'm just gonna put this in my purse.
Do you want to poke it and taste it? No. You don't want to do that. Okay. So basically what has to happen is this is capped. So if I put this in the extractor, it's just going to spin and make a lot of noise, and not much is going to happen. So what I did was I purchased this little decapping platform, and what it does is it allows me. I'm gonna have you hold this, all right? Can you hold the red one?
Oh yeah, I like red.
That's a comb. You could try it. So anyway, what happens is this: is you have the honey that's hiding under here, and in this bucket, if you want to see it from the top, in this bucket there's a mesh bag. What it's going to do is going to catch the majority of the cappings.
Come on in.
And so it should come up on the screen for you. So I have some that are in there, and what it does, it allows the honey to drip down underneath it, so that there's less waste. So it's going to do similar to what the screens are going to do, and it'll allow some of that honey to flow off of it because it just becomes a sticky mess. So here's how this works. And I know he's blocking some of you, so hopefully you can see it on the screen and it'll show it for you. So basically what you want to do is you want to use this tool to get underneath, and as you pull it up, it'll decap the top.
Oh, will you look at that? Decap it.
Is that sweet or what?
That is sweet.
All right. So that's there. It'll run right down. Come to this next one here. And again, you're trying to just get under that top layer. And as you get under that top layer, it opens up each of those cells. The cappings will fall in there and hopefully not on the platform, so I'm not accountable for it.
Oh, don't let that happen. Miss Clark would not like that.
Listen,
you're making a mess in here.
You can take care of her, right?
Uh-oh, Miss Clark, don't listen to him. We're friends.
Miss Clark, I'll tell you what she was saying earlier.
Oh, now I know you're lying. I'm going to decap you in a second. Okay.
I don't know who gave her a sharp tool around here.
Oh, man.
That was dangerous.
This guy.
I will say one tool that I have not used and a lot of people love is one that Miss Brown would love. Thank you. Look at you. Is what's called a hot knife. And what it is it actually is instead of like just a serrated knife, it's a knife that will heat up and it'll actually just go right through it, almost like, a hot knife into butter. It'll just go right through.
Why didn't you bring the hot knife?
I didn't want you to burn me.
You're smart.
Some have said that, others have not. All right, so you worked it. It is a little tough right here. You know what? It's probably because can you get that off? No, you don't know how to do that.
Oh, you want me to do it?
Yeah. Just scrape that right there. Comb that right out of there.
Such a good assistant.
You are. That was impressive. All right, that should work. They worked hard to make all this. So what happens is you get this in here, and again, you're going to lose some that's going to drip down, but what's nice is it'll drip down through that bag. Mm-hmm. And as it drips down through that, let me try again. Does it give you a new appreciation for some of the work that goes behind it? Now, there are always things that you can become more efficient on. It might just cost you a little bit more. Miss Clark had mentioned the idea of, I'm not making money off of it. And realistically, the reason why is there is a little bit of an investment that you can make. And, you can sell the honey. We try to keep a lot of what we were going to use. Our family uses quite a bit of it. So we have already harvested this year probably around 50 or 60 pounds of honey. And I have about 40 pounds in that extractor already that I'm about ready to kind of show you how it works. Thank you. We'll just leave that here. All right. You think I can get this over here without dripping? What do you think?
Oh, no. This is not going to be good.
You guys believe, right? I believe. Hurry, miss. Hurry. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open that up.
This guy?
Yeah. Oh, this side right there. Yeah. And grab that one out of there.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to hand this one to you, right? You take that.
I'll take this.
Okay. I'm going to put this one in here.
Okay. That's a big boy.
It's a big boy. So once that sits down in here, and you can see this here from the top, basically this extractor handles 4 different frames that are in here. And so it's only going to extract the outside because it's going to spin, use centrifugal force, and it's going to draw it out, okay? So what will happen is this. They've got a lot of different fancy safety mechanisms. I'm going to bypass one. So we'll just pray that it works fine here. But I'll show you how this works. So I'll trade you spots. There we go. So what will happen is this. Once you turn this on, it'll start spinning. Lord willing. And as it begins to spin, what it's going to do, it's going to start forcing that honey to kick out to the outside. There goes my finger. I put it on wheels. What it does is generally you want to bolt it down so it doesn't walk. With these wheels, it actually just kind of spins in space, which is nice because it doesn't go running away from me, which is a blessing. So speed it up a little bit. And the longer you allow it to spin, the better it pulls it out, but it has pulled most of it out on that one side already. So what I'll do is I'll find that same one. And what you would normally do is lift it up, and you can see now on this side, if you want to bring that camera a little bit closer, come on my side. And you can see it's still a little bit wet because some of it wasn't decapped, and the rest of it has drawn out a good amount on the inside. So you spin it without spilling it. Maybe. There we go. And then same thing on this side here. Once you spin that around.
And how long are you going to do this for?
20 more minutes.
Oh, mercy.
I'm just kidding.
Looking at him doing this for a while.
All right, so that'll spin that out, and it'll give you that side. Okay, now what I did was to save your time, is we went ahead and did this already with basically about 10 other frames before this. Okay, so what happens is, on the front side here, generally what we have is a strainer, and they make a strainer for this. You can get a lot of this stuff even off of Amazon in today's day and age, and it cuts down on the microns. And you can get different levels depending on how thin you want it to be. But this is a double strainer, and what it does is it allows it to come through and it catches any of the cappings that are possibly still in there. And bluntly, if there's any bee parts or anything that falls into that, this is what's going to make sure that you have nothing else in there. All right, so it'll make it so that when you get it, it's nice. So generally what happens is this. You'll put that right underneath this extractor, all right? So this is called a honey gate, and this honey gate here allows you to be able to control it a little bit better when the honey comes in and out. So once that's spun it.
Ooh, ladies, look at that honey. I'm about to just put my head under there and get some.
You could do that. I don't know that anybody else would want to eat it afterward, but So what'll happen is this will work, and depending on, again, how much you have in there, how long it's gonna take, it'll filter right down through there. This is called straining instead of filtering. I mentioned to you most times when they say unfiltered, it means that they've gone through a straining process instead of a hard filtering process where you lose a lot of the added benefits. So for the sake of...
I'm seeing bee bodies.
You seeing bee bodies?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. I think
Head,
that's just...
leg.
Yeah, that might be.
We got to strain that out.
All right. And so, again, this is the start to that process. So looking across this way,
What do you need?
you go from the bees making the honey to the point where you use the tools, you'll be able to pull that out, and you work those bees, and you get that honey out. But then what you want to do is you want to get it to a space where you can actually work the frames, decap them. A lot of times I'll use another bin to be able to set things in as I'm done. That way it doesn't drip all over the place. Once it fills into this bucket, yeah, point to that bucket, there you go. Once it gets into that bucket, generally what you want is this. You want it to have some time where it's settling. Sometimes people have a settling tank. You could do it even in the 5-gallon buckets, but there'll be a lot of air bubbles from it having spun and come down. And the more you let it settle, the more pure it will be. All right, so I don't mind that those are in there, but it'll look a lot more pure if you can skim off the top of that, and it'll be good. And then usually you'll have this honey gate here for being able to fill in and do what's called bottling. So if you want to put it in jars, cans, etc., you can do that through that honey gate, and it gives you the opportunity to do it. All right, so overall, I mean, that is the honey making process. Now, Ms. Brown, you came up here and helped. I feel like I kind of just kept to the physical how to make honey stuff.
That's okay. That's what we want to hear.
Right, but I mean, we are at the summit, and it's supposed to be spiritual too. This is good stuff. I was thinking about you.
Contain yourself, please.
I'm trying.
Okay?
I was thinking about you though, and the reason why is this. You got to do some of the spiritual stuff. Be kind. You know what I mean? You got to be kind.
I like
so
that.
I got this for you because you were making some jokes that were...
What are you trying to say?
I don't know. I just think it'd be good to learn some spiritual things at the summit about bees. We learned how to... make this sweet honey and how beneficial it is and all of that. But
yeah.
I'll give that to you. Maybe you can learn some things. There's some in there.
See what's in here. Oh, goodness. Honey, there's nothing in here. What am I supposed to do with this?
It had a bee on the front. It was cool.
If you have a question, now when we just sit and talk about bees, I'll tell you it is amazing. So there's a little vial of honey, a little bee on the top of it for you. And that's a little gift from Brother Justin and our church from you, a little reminder to be sweet. And so they're going to be passing that out. But while they are, I'm wondering if any of you have any questions and be thinking about. There's one thing I was amazed Justin didn't mention. The way bees keep things clean. See how sticky this whole deal looks like it would be here? You can imagine. When he showed me this the other day, it was spotless inside. It was like brand new stainless steel. And I said, well, that must be something to keep that clean. No, the bees clean it. They clean every little bit of residue and stuff from the inside of it. He's never cleaned it. And it's on the inside after he lets them loose on it. I guess you just turn them loose in there?
I put it out away from my hives, and they basically rob it. So they come and they clean everything up. So the wax cappings, everything, they'll come and get it and take it away.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing the things that they know, the way they communicate with each other. So if you have a question, Brother Justin's going to answer a few questions before we dismiss for lunch. Anything interesting or anything that interests you, raise your hand. Okay, over here. Mrs. Higgins, come on up, Justin. Anything you want to know? I wanted to know a lot of stuff. Everything he tells me, I have another question about it, but go ahead, Mrs.
I'm sorry.
Higgins.
I saw
so
him.
raise
Yes,
your hand
ma'am.
if you have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Speak up, Mrs. Higgins.
Yes.
So would you, across the board, say that the supermarket would not necessarily, I'm not talking about Whole Foods, I'm talking about your average shop rate, should we not shop there? And if not, how do you know, I noticed a lot of the farm stands, it says local honey, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, from what you said, I think it would be important not to be heat treated.
Right. It's a great question. So it's not that I don't trust the label. I think it's important knowing what the label says and what it means, because some things seem like it would be good for you. Like pure honey sounds really good, but it may not have those other properties. So best case scenario, my suggestion is this: the more you know about where it's coming from, the better. And if you can get to know a local beekeeper, that would be the best way. You find out how they handle it, and then it gives you someone you can purchase from, and you know where it's sourced from. So I don't think that all honey out there is bad, and there's many people that are doing a great job, including at farmers markets. And you can also get some of these things that are a little bit more commercial, but it's very difficult to find something that's not been heated. And so unfiltered is usually something that means it's not been heated at least as much. And there's a difference between heating and warming. You can warm something like in the cold months. If this actually is one example of it. This is a heater. I haven't used it yet and don't plan on using it, but I have it in case I ever need to. In the winter, this can warm it, but it can keep it around even 80 degrees, 70 degrees, something a little bit warmer to help it move through a little bit better. So it's really knowing some of those answers. So the best thing would be talk to the people there at the local farm stand or somewhere you're interested in buying. Ask them. If you're going to buy it, at a bulk level, then you probably are just taking a chance on some of that. Now, some of it is regulated. So if you have a company that's there, it's regulated. So find out what it actually means with those labels. Hopefully that answers. A lot of hands. Yes, ma'am. I'll go all the way over.
So what do the bees do during the winter?
Great question. So bees do not actually hibernate, but what they do is they focus on staying alive. So they will keep their resources in their hive, and when it's cold, they will cluster together, and they will focus on keeping the queen warm and appropriate. And if there's any brood, they'll keep that at the right temperature, and they'll cluster around that in a small amount. As the bees on the outside get cold from being furthest out, they will rotate through, and others will take the outside, and they will cluster together. So they don't like being out when it's rainy, and they don't like being out when it's cold. So they will move within their hive on a rainy day when it's warmer. Sometimes they'll fly, but it makes it difficult for them. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
The cappings.
Yes. Okay, so a lot of times we focus on the honey. The cappings are made of wax. There's also other things that are in there, like, for example, just waste from other parts. Most people, what they will do is they'll take those cappings and they will render them down. Once they're rendered down, you can then scrape off any of the waste, and you scrape that off, you render it again, and you can keep doing that until it's pure beeswax. So people use that for things like chapstick, candles. I use it to put it back on my hives to help them draw out the foundation. Wax is something that's a lot more difficult for the bees to produce. It's actually a certain age that they have the wax glands where it produces the wax. And so it takes about 7 to 10 pounds of the energy to make honey to make a pound of wax. And so it's about 7 to 10 times more strenuous.
I just have a comment. Scientists, physicists, everybody say that bumblebees should not be able to fly.
Right.
And it tickles me to think that my God can defy physics
Yep.
that he created
Yep.
and make bumblebees fly.
Absolutely. If you not understand what she had said on that part, NASA even puts a picture up, and it's the backside of a bumblebee flying, and it says aerodynamically the bee should not be able to fly because of how big it is, how small its wings are. And it says, but nobody's ever told it. And we know that that points to our God who has all the intricacies. He's got it figured out. So that's great. Yes, ma'am. Miss Kelly. Sorry. Yes. Right. So usually the viscosity and the thickness of the honey a lot of times has to do with temperature. So a cooler honey is going to just be thicker. And that's usually the difference on it. Sometimes the color and the transparency is greatly determined by the flowers and where they pull the nectar. And right in front. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Either one. In the back. I can't hear you. I don't have a page. Call me. I'm at Vision Baptist College. No, so I don't. I've learned a lot. There are many resources out there. So you can YouTube it. You can get it on Facebook. You can get it on Instagram. And now that we've talked about it and you sat through a session, Siri has listened to every one of you. And you will have all the homesteading and everything all over your feed. It'll be great. You'll love it. So there are great resources out there. I'm focused a little bit more, on some other things in life, but it is something we love doing together. And I miss somebody right down the row here. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so you can look up, there are a few different ways that you can test the honey. So generally the test for the honey is to find out whether it has sugar water in it. So one thing that does happen in our area, a lot of times the bees will not make it through winter if they are not fed, okay? And the reason why is because if you're taking honey from them, sometimes in the winters they need a lot. For example, I lost a hive last winter, and the reason why is because I was trying to just let them be and leave them, and they ate somewhere between 50 to 60 pounds of honey, we estimated, and I didn't check them because a lot of times it's best to just leave them through winter and let them take care of themselves. So sometimes there are times where you do want to feed your bees, okay? Now, the right way to do that so you don't basically adulterate the honey that you would like to either have for your family or sell is you would never feed while there are what's called the supers on top. So since I never pull honey from those bottom brood boxes, those bigger deeps, and usually in our area we'll do 2 deep boxes so they have plenty of resources, and I don't pull honey from there, I will put a feeder on when it's just those boxes. So going into winter, I'll remove extra boxes so they don't have to try to heat that whole area. And they'll condense it down, and I can feed them, and they will sustain themselves through winter, even off of some of that sugar water. They may store a little bit for themselves, but it's only in the brood box, so it's not going to end up in my supers, and you're going to be able to have that. So the way to test it, to answer your question, sometimes people will do different tests where you can actually put it in water and see if it just dissolves or if it's going to stay down in a glop there in it. So honey doesn't just melt, if that makes sense. It can get thinner, but it's not going to melt. That's an easy way to do it. And there are other tests that you can look up. Some people swear by them and others don't. And usually the question I get asked a lot, in case anybody's thinking about it, is what happens when honey touches metal? Anybody see that recently where it's like, you can't eat, don't use a metal spoon or you ruin your honey? Who's seen that recently? Anybody? All right, that's technically a lie, all right? So here's the truth behind it. So just so you know, right, all that honey would be done. Yeah, all right, sorry. So here's what it is. Back in the day, a lot of times they didn't use the different alloys, and you had harsher metals that would leach. And what it would do is those metals, like an actual like sterling silver and things like that, and things that have to be polished and taken care of, it can react with the enzymes because honey is very acidic. And so that's where you get the reaction. So if you're going to store honey, it's best to store it in something like glass and things like that. So over time, metal could affect it if it's certain types. But most stainless steel is not going to have an effect on it, especially on something with that quick of a turnaround. So that ties in also with testing that and if it's still good. Yes, ma'am. It's a great question. There's nothing different other than what they feed her. So it starts from an egg. They decide we're going to raise her. So they make what's called a queen cup. And it's a larger cell that kind of comes off the frame. And what they do is they put royal jelly in there instead of just their normal food. And it allows her ovaries and everything to develop. She becomes longer. And then she knows that because she has those ovaries and everything like that, she knows to then go mate with a drone from another hive. So she'll go on a mating flight for a few days, and then she'll come back to that, and she'll start the rest of her journey. And the queen will live somewhere between 3 to 5 years, all right? So she lives a lot longer. She's tended to. She's usually very fertile and laying a lot for the first basically 2 to 3 years. So great question. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so she didn't really drink it. She was teasing on that part, but it's propolis. It's a propolis spray, and it's basically an immunity builder or boost. And so, here, I'll toss you one. You can have it. You can buy it online. This is Beekeeper's Natural. Can you catch? Here, I'll bring it to you. So you can buy this, and what they do is they pare down the propolis, which they just collect off of it. You're welcome. And what it is it's just a spray, and it has some of the antibacterial properties to it. And the way they make propolis is they go to the different like pine trees and different trees that have sap and things like that, and they'll pull it off, and they'll pass it back and forth, and they'll make it very sticky, and they'll add in some of the other properties. They're able to produce different substances that basically Like even in the honey, they'll add an enzyme that is very similar to almost like hydrogen peroxide. And so because of the acidity level of honey and the different things like propolis and things that they've passed around, that's what keeps it so antibacterial. Great question. And that beekeeper stuff can be found on Amazon, and they have some for kids. By the way, honey really shouldn't go to kids under 2, just as an FYI, all right? So disclaimer, yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. Yes, great question. So the flavor of the honey. Now there's a difference, and I'll tell you this first. There's a difference between infused honey and then like blueberry honey. So blueberry infused honey is different than blueberry honey. So if it's a certain type of honey, like she was talking about wildflower, which is what you have, which is what we pretty much have around here. Sometimes you'll get clover honey. It's where the bees are going and pollinating, but they go generally 2 to 3 miles. They can go as far as 5 miles, maybe stretch it, as they try to figure that out with the bees. But it's really where they're going to gather their pollen, gather the nectar, and it does change the taste. So some of you New Yorkers, you go up there right now, you're getting ready to start booming with, what's it called? Help me out. What is it? Thank you. I knew the New Yorkers were back there somewhere, right? And goldenrod, and it will smell like stinky socks if you smell it. But some people love that. Clover honey is another one. And so people like that. So if you have an area where it's just, primarily that, generally that's where you could then put it on the label. In Jersey, we have so many different varieties. You're pretty much going to get wildflower unless they put it in blueberry fields and only pollinated there and only pulled from there, and then you'll get that. And then there's also the infused. Yes? What was it? Buckwheat funny. Buckwheat funny. That's funny. All right. Buckwheat honey would just be something where there's that plant, that flower, and they're in that area. So it's primarily from that is why they would get that. Yes, ma'am. How often do I get stung? That's a good question. So I don't get stung as much anymore. I have new gloves that are really nice. I had cheap Amazon gloves that I got stung right through them. So I've been stung, I don't know, maybe 8 times or something. I'm not allergic. And you get to know the bees a whole lot better. So I am not very adventurous because I do a lot of other things. Like I'm not doing beekeeping all the time. People who are constantly going in and out and doing that, like it doesn't take a lot of my time. I've spent more time because I've been intrigued by it and wanted to learn. And so I've done that. So I don't know how many questions you want to keep running. I'll be doing vision tours and things like that, but I will be around. I am happy to talk to anybody about any of it. They will. The humidity right now is kind of filling it up, which they'll start fanning it out. There's probably maybe 8,000 or so that are in there. It might be a little less than that because I took them outside and like Susie and some of them, they didn't come back. She's still flying out there.